What if I told you that Cheney and Jill Biden, two of the most powerful women in Washington, just got called out in a way no one saw coming? Former prosecutor Pam Bondi didn't just throw shade. She dropped a political bomb that could shake the White House. Secrets, lies, and behind-the-scenes manipulation. This isn't a theory. It's a direct accusation. And the fallout? It's only just beginning. I'm not here to play nice. The American people deserve the truth. That wasn't just a line. It was a declaration, a warning, and a moment that instantly went viral. On what was supposed to be a standard political panel discussion, Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and a longtime Trump ally, grabbed the spotlight and refused to let go. Seated alongside a mix of journalists and ex-lawmakers, she looked calm at first. But as the topic shifted to government transparency and the role of powerful women in Washington, everything changed. Bondi leaned forward, locked eyes with the host, and delivered what's now being called the most shocking takedown of 2025. And the targets? None other than Liz Cheney, the former Republican congresswoman who became a lightning rod during the Trump era, and First Lady Jill Biden, wife of President Joe Biden, and an influential figure behind the scenes. The moment caught everyone off guard. Cameras were rolling. The host attempted to steer the conversation elsewhere. Other guests looked visibly uncomfortable. But Bondi wasn't done. You want to talk about abuse of power? Let's talk about Liz Cheney. Let's talk about Jill Biden. Let's talk about the lies the American people have been fed and who's helping cover them up. The studio went silent. Bondi's words hit like a hammer. It wasn't vague innuendo. She was calling them out by name, publicly, unapologetically, and in front of millions of viewers. In the hours that followed, that clip would explode across the internet, posted, shared, and dissected by pundits on both sides of the aisle. On TikTok, users remixed the moment with dramatic sound effects. On Twitter, the hashtag #BondiBombshell began trending worldwide. YouTube reaction channels jumped on it within minutes. Everyone had one question. What did Bondi mean? Let's rewind. For months, tensions had been bubbling beneath the surface. Conservatives have long viewed Liz Cheney as a traitor to the Republican base, especially after her high-profile role on the January 6th committee, where she took direct aim at Donald Trump. Cheney styled herself as a defender of democracy, but many on the right accused her of working with Democrats to destroy her own party from within. Meanwhile, Jill Biden has often been portrayed as the soft face of the administration, a teacher, a mother, a calm presence. But according to Bondi, that's a carefully curated image that hides a much more strategic operator. Bondi suggested that Jill isn't just a first lady, she's a political force who helps control the message coming out of the White House. Behind every carefully staged press conference and tightly managed interview, Bondi claimed, there's someone pulling the strings. And it's not always Joe. But here's what made the moment even more explosive. Bondi claimed to have first-hand information from former White House staffers, people who she says witnessed Jill Biden blocking key interviews, redirecting press questions, and even discouraging family members from testifying about internal issues. As for Cheney, Bondi didn't hold back there either. She alleged that Cheney had private meetings with Democrat donors while publicly claiming to be defending conservative values. According to Bondi, Liz Cheney isn't saving democracy, she's just selling her seat at the table. Now, let's be clear. At this point, Bondi hasn't produced hard evidence on air. But the accusations themselves were enough to throw political media into chaos. Major networks scrambled to get responses. Cheney's office issued a cold, one-sentence statement dismissing the comments as political theater. The White House stayed silent. And Jill Biden's team? No comment at all. The silence spoke volumes. Bondi's message struck a chord, not just because of who she named, but how she said it. This wasn't a carefully worded press release or a passive-aggressive tweet. This was live, unscripted, and fueled by conviction. And in that moment, it didn't matter whether you were a fan of Bondi or not. It didn't matter if you leaned left or right. Because what she said forced everyone, viewers, journalists, and politicians alike, to pause and reconsider what they thought they knew about these two women. In the days that followed, Bondi doubled down. She appeared on multiple conservative podcasts, promising more details in the weeks ahead. She hinted at leaked emails, anonymous witnesses, and a broader pattern of political elitism that connects names like Cheney, Biden, Pelosi, and Obama in ways the public has never fully understood. And that's where this story really begins. Because this wasn't just about one dramatic moment on TV. This was a shot fired in a much bigger war, a war over who controls the truth in American politics. Are Liz Cheney and Jill Biden really part of some coordinated effort to silence opposition and control narratives? Or is this just another chapter in America's endless game of political blame and spin? Either way, Bondi made one thing crystal clear. You can lie to the media. You can lie to the polls. But you can't lie to the American people forever. And with that final line, she put down the microphone, leaned back in her chair, and watched the world react. Whether you see her as a truth-teller or a provocateur, one thing is certain. Pam Bondi's bombshell has changed the conversation, and no one is walking away untouched. Pam Bondi didn't just light a match. She lit the fuse. And now, the political world is waiting for the explosion. As her claims continue to dominate headlines and split public opinion, Bondi is promising what she calls her next move, and it might be the most consequential yet. During a private live stream with supporters, Bondi said she has documents, audio recordings, and testimonies from individuals who've worked inside both the White House and Congress. People who, according to her, were silenced, threatened, and forced out for knowing too much. These aren't people with agendas. These are people who saw things, who lived it, and who are ready to talk, she said. She claims these whistleblowers are preparing to come forward publicly, backed by legal protection and independent journalists, not legacy media. And if they do, Bondi says everything changes. The alleged evidence. So what exactly is coming? According to Bondi, leaked emails showing coordination between Jill Biden's team and select journalists to manage public perception during the president's cognitive health controversies. Internal memos revealing that Liz Cheney was in contact with Democrat donors and media handlers long before her public feud with the GOP began. Staff exit statements that detail alleged threats made to former aides who wanted to speak out about dysfunction and political manipulation behind the scenes. Bondi hasn't released this evidence yet, but she claims it's all on the record and legally verified. Skeptics are demanding proof. Critics are accusing her of grandstanding. But her supporters? They're growing louder by the hour, flooding message boards, YouTube comments, and podcast chats with one question. What are they hiding? The system is shaking. Whether you believe her or not, one thing is clear. Pam Bondi has shattered the illusion that politics is played clean behind closed doors. She's forced people to ask difficult questions. Why does the media go soft on Jill Biden? Why is Liz Cheney suddenly a darling of the political left? Why are stories critical of the first family so carefully filtered? And now, people are demanding answers. Not just from politicians, but from the institutions they once trusted to tell the truth. Even inside Washington, there's a sense that control is slipping. Some strategists are quietly advising their clients to brace for leaks. Journalists are reaching out to anonymous sources. Congressional aides are reviewing their NDAs. Bondi didn't just poke the bear. She walked into the den and dared it to growl. Final message to America. Pam Bondi ended her recent speech with this chilling message. They want you confused. They want you distracted. They want you divided. Because when we're all fighting each other, they're safe. But not anymore. We're not just pulling back the curtain. We're tearing it down. Those words struck a chord. For many, this is no longer about Bondi, Cheney, or Jill Biden. It's about something deeper. It's about trust, truth, and who really controls the American story. And now the ball is rolling. Investigations are heating up. Whistleblowers are preparing to speak. And Bondi has promised, I will not be silenced. Not now. Not ever. Final thoughts and call to action. So, here's the big question. Is Pam Bondi exposing a dangerous network of lies and political manipulation? Or is this all a masterclass in political theater? What happens next could either confirm the biggest political scandal in years, or reveal just how easily public perception can be swayed by a well-timed narrative. Either way, this story is far from over. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe there's a hidden power structure in Washington? And if Bondi's right, what happens next? Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss part 2 of this investigation, because if Bondi releases that evidence, we'll be the first to break it down. This is more than just politics. This is the battle for the truth. Just when it seemed the dust might settle, Pam Bondi escalated things even further. This time, not with a TV appearance, but with a veiled promise during a podcast interview. "You've only seen the tip of the iceberg," she said. "There's a quiet network operating in Washington, and Cheney and Jill Biden are just the faces." Wait, a network? Bondi was suggesting something bigger than two powerful women abusing their influence. She was hinting at a coordinated effort, a hidden alliance between powerful political players, media handlers, and elite donors working behind the scenes to protect each other and control the narrative. And once again, the internet exploded. The quiet alliance theory. According to Bondi and a growing chorus of online voices, this quiet alliance isn't about Democrats versus Republicans. It's about insiders versus outsiders. They don't care about party lines, Bondi said. They care about preserving power. And when someone threatens that system, whether it's Trump or a whistleblower or an independent journalist, they crush it. At the heart of this alleged network are strategic relationships, former political rivals who now seem strangely aligned. Cheney, once a conservative firebrand, now praised in left-wing media. Jill Biden, the First Lady with no official role, allegedly influencing White House press and personnel decisions. Major news anchors, said to be getting tips directly from protected sources. Political donors, funding both establishment Republicans and centrist Democrats behind closed doors. Bondi claims this web exists to preserve a certain version of Washington, one where only the approved voices are heard and outsiders are smeared, silenced, or erased. Sound dramatic? Maybe. But some new leaks began to support her case. Secret meetings and strategic leaks. Just days after Bondi's podcast interview, conservative investigative journalist Chad Masters published a report citing anonymous Capitol Hill staffers who alleged off-the-record briefings between Cheney's former aides and high-ranking Biden advisors in early 2023. The purpose of these meetings? According to the report, cross-party strategic alignment on messaging during moments of political unrest. In plain terms, coordinated narratives. The report suggests that when controversial stories broke, like the Hunter Biden investigation or Trump's indictment, this alliance worked to shape the media's response. That meant selectively releasing information, avoiding damaging details, and even using trusted, friendly anchors to lead coverage. Bondi highlighted these reports and added more fuel. We're talking about manipulation on a massive scale. And the worst part? Most Americans don't even realize it's happening. She said several whistleblowers are now preparing to go public, individuals who once worked under both Cheney's camp and within the West Wing. If those claims are true, what we're seeing now is just the beginning of a massive political unraveling. Public trust cracks further. Polls started to reflect the growing skepticism. People began asking questions like, why did the media suddenly warm up to Cheney? Why does Jill Biden have such control over the president's public image? Why are so many uncomfortable stories about the Biden family being buried? Even some in the press began to distance themselves from the establishment narrative. One reporter, speaking anonymously to The Hill, admitted, "There are definitely stories we were told to avoid. And yeah, Jill Biden's office has made more than one angry phone call." Meanwhile, emails surfaced showing that a senior White House aide allegedly requested a national reporter reframe their article about the president's cognitive health, an article that Jill Biden had personally objected to, according to an internal memo. None of this proves a secret network exists, but it doesn't take much to see the patterns. And for Pam Bondi's audience, the picture couldn't be clearer. The elites protect their own. And truth is whatever they say it is. The power of perception. Here's what makes Bondi's message so effective. She's not telling people what to believe. She's asking them to look closer. She's saying, look at who gets silenced. Look at who gets praised. Look at what they don't want you to question. In a time where public trust in government is at an all-time low, Bondi's accusations are hitting hard, not because they're proven, but because they feel plausible. And in politics, perception is everything. Bondi ended her podcast with one more warning. If you think this is about two women in politics, think again. This is about a system. And I plan to rip the mask off piece by piece. Pam Bondi's bombshell didn't just stir up controversy, it shattered the political landscape. Within hours of her now infamous remarks, social media platforms were flooded with reactions. Twitter, now X, lit up with hashtags like #ExposeCheney, #JillBidenKnew, and #BondiUnleashed. But this wasn't just your usual internet drama. Mainstream media outlets were forced to respond. CNN called Bondi's comments a dangerous escalation of partisan rhetoric. MSNBC accused her of spreading conspiracy theories. The Washington Post published an op-ed titled, "Pam Bondi is playing with fire." But the right-leaning media? They pounced. Fox News aired her full remarks on repeat for 2 days straight. Conservative podcasts praised her for breaking the elite code of silence. And influencers with millions of followers began connecting the dots between Jill Biden's public quietness and her rumored behind-the-scenes control, between Liz Cheney's fall from grace and her alleged backroom alliances. The political earthquake was real. And everyone felt it. A country divided. Again. Reactions split fast. Supporters called Pam Bondi a whistleblower, someone brave enough to say what others only whispered behind closed doors. They applauded her for targeting what they called the protected class, Washington insiders who never seemed to face real accountability. Critics called it a calculated stunt, a desperate attempt to stay relevant in an increasingly chaotic political environment. They said her accusations were thin, lacking hard evidence, and meant only to stir up outrage and attention. But even some independents and moderates couldn't ignore one key point. Why were so many questions about the first family and about Cheney's sudden alliances off limits in the media? Some wondered aloud. If Bondi's claims were so outrageous, why wasn't the White House responding at all? Why had Liz Cheney gone silent on social media? The lack of answers only fueled speculation. And for Bondi supporters, that silence was proof enough. Inside the media war room, behind closed doors, sources say White House communications staff went into emergency mode. A leak from inside one major news outlet revealed that producers were instructed to minimize coverage of Bondi's claims unless they were being fact-checked or refuted. Think about that. Instead of allowing open discussion, the focus became control. Control of the narrative, control of the message, and above all, control of perception. Meanwhile, journalists began whispering to one another, some saying they had also experienced unusual pressure from the Biden administration when reporting on sensitive topics. One even claimed, anonymously, that they were warned not to go too hard on Jill Biden. And that's exactly what Bondi had warned about, a system where media cooperation protects power instead of challenging it. Political figures speak out. As public pressure mounted, politicians began to weigh in. Former Trump strategist Steve Bannon called Bondi's remarks the beginning of the reckoning. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted, "Pam Bondi said what we've all been thinking. The First Lady is not innocent, and Liz Cheney is no hero." On the other side, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said Bondi was peddling lies to stoke division. Senator Mitt Romney, a Cheney ally, called the accusations vile and completely without merit. But here's the twist. A handful of former Biden staffers, now speaking off the record, told journalists that Jill Biden was more active in the administration than the public realized. One former aide said, "She's smart. She's careful. But yes, she's involved in almost everything." If that's news to people, they haven't been paying attention. Even that small admission gave Bondi's supporters more fuel. The American people decide. As always, the battle came down to the court of public opinion. Polls conducted the week after Bondi's appearance showed an unexpected shift. 41% of voters said they believe Jill Biden has undue influence inside the White House. 52% of conservatives now believe Liz Cheney is working with Democrats against Republican interests. And among independents, trust in the White House dropped by 7 points. just in a matter of days. Bondi's words had done more than spark a media firestorm. They'd reignited the debate about who's really running things in Washington and how much of what we see on TV is just a performance. For years, Americans have questioned the authenticity of their leaders. But now, thanks to one bold statement on a panel show, those questions are louder than ever. And with Bondi promising more revelations to come, this is no longer just a controversy. It's a movement. What happened next wasn't just shocking, it was calculated, deliberate, and devastating. Moments after her mic drop moment, Pam Bondi turned toward the camera, her voice firm, her expression unshaken. What came out of her mouth would instantly become one of the most talked about political soundbites of the year. This isn't about party loyalty anymore. It's about corruption. And the American people have the right to know who's really holding the levers of power. She then named names, and two stood out like thunderclaps: Liz Cheney and Jill Biden. Bondi didn't just make vague accusations. She laid out a direct case, point by point. Her claim? That these two women, though from completely different political worlds, have allegedly been operating behind the scenes to manipulate narratives, control public perception, and shield the establishment from scrutiny. Let's break it down. The case against Liz Cheney. Bondi accused Cheney of pretending to fight for democracy while actually protecting the very political class that silences dissent. She says she's standing up for the Constitution, Bondi said, but when the cameras are off, Liz Cheney is holding private dinners with the same political donors who are bankrolling attacks on everyday Americans' freedoms. Bondi suggested that Cheney's high-profile role on the January 6th committee wasn't just about justice. It was a carefully orchestrated campaign to discredit Trump and his supporters while gaining political capital from the left. And it worked for a while. Cheney gained praise from CNN, MSNBC, and liberal newspapers. She became the media's favorite Republican voice of reason. But according to Bondi, that was all a distraction. She wasn't defending the truth. She was defending her legacy, Bondi declared. She sold out the Republican base for a pat on the back from the elites. She went further, claiming Cheney had met with several top Democratic operatives in private while publicly attacking Republican colleagues. Bondi suggested Cheney might be positioning herself for a future role that's less about principles and more about power. The audience gasped. Some clapped. Others looked stunned. But Bondi wasn't finished. The Jill Biden revelation. Then came the curveball. Most Americans see Jill Biden as a soft-spoken educator, someone who plays a more traditional, behind-the-scenes first lady role. But according to Pam Bondi, that's a carefully crafted illusion. Jill Biden is not just a supportive spouse, she's one of the most powerful, unelected figures in Washington. Bondi claimed that Jill Biden plays a direct role in strategic decisions inside the White House, particularly those related to President Biden's image, interviews, and public appearances.
Here's what Bondi said.
Do you ever wonder why certain reporters get frozen out? Why the press never asks real questions about Hunter Biden? Jill is the filter. Nothing gets to Joe without going through her. She alleged that Jill Biden works closely with senior advisors to suppress media stories that could damage the family and, by extension, the administration. Bondi even hinted at pressure campaigns against networks that dared to dig too deep into Hunter Biden's legal troubles or President Biden's mental fitness. And that's not all. Bondi claimed Jill had intervened multiple times to stop certain internal staffers from speaking out about dysfunction in the White House. These were people, Bondi said, who were ready to talk, until they were personally warned by Biden's inner circle. This isn't just about protecting Joe, she said. It's about protecting the entire narrative that's been sold to the American people since day one. It was a lot to take in. A respected legal figure like Bondi wasn't just criticizing policies. She was accusing two of the most recognizable political figures in America of systematic deception and influence peddling. Shockwaves through the studio. As Bondi finished her remarks, the atmosphere in the studio turned electric. One panelist tried to change the subject. The host stammered out a polite pivot. But the damage was already done. Within minutes, viewers began flooding social media with clips and reactions. Supporters of Bondi praised her as a truth teller who finally said what others were too afraid to. Detractors dismissed her claims as unproven and dangerous. But the question that started buzzing across the political world was the same. What if she's right? Bondi didn't flinch. In a follow-up segment, she hinted that this was just the beginning. This isn't about one interview, she warned. It's about decades of rot, and I'm not the only one who's going to speak up. And just like that, the floodgates opened. The accusations had been made. The internet had exploded. And two of America's most powerful women were now in the spotlight like never before.
And Bondi?
She had just fired the first shot in what's shaping up to be a political reckoning.